Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is that you're watching this. How you doing? My name is Bianca and welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time, then come on in, take your shoes off, stay a while because I got a story to tell you. Today I'm going to tell you a true crime story about an exoneration, which is the story of somebody who has been wrongfully accused and convicted of a crime and later proven to be innocent. If you like true crime, if you like makeup, if you like happy endings, then you should subscribe to my channel because that's the type of stuff you're gonna find here. I'm gonna tell you this true crime story and I'm gonna do my makeup at the same time. I'm actually gonna recreate a look I did last weekend when I went to the Giveon concert, which was so good. I know it's been a while. I hope you guys missed me. If not, that's okay. I'm back and I just popped up on your page. That's even better. I'm really excited to tell you guys the story. So, today we will be talking about a man named Rickey Dale-Wyatt. I actually couldn't find that much information about Rickey's life before he went to prison, other than the fact that he was 25 years old at the time of the crime, and the fact that he had a 3-year-old daughter at the time he was arrested, or at the time he went to prison. So basically what had happened was, between November of 1980 and January of 1981, there were a string of attacks that were sexual in nature that occurred in Dallas, Texas, all in kind of like the same neighborhood area because, you know, Dallas is large. So on November 1st of 1980, we had our first attack in Dallas. This was the attack of a woman named Cynthia. Cynthia called 911 and reported to police that she was attacked by a man who was sexually motivated. If you catch what I'm saying, it was a sexual attack by a man she stated to be at least 5'9", weighing between 170 to 180 pounds. She said he was like clean shaven, probably around 30 years old, and that he had a gold tooth, which is something like pretty distinctive. She reported this to an investigator whose name was John Coughlin. John Coughlin created the police report on that day, November 1st. He made a supplemental police report on November 15th. Cynthia had stated that she weighed approximately 175 pounds and that her attacker must have weighed the same. On December 19th of 1980, a young Pearline was walking to school when a man holding a blue pistol walked up on her and pulled her into an alley and threatened her. You see, he must have walked up on the wrong one because Pearline got to tussling with him. And after a little bit of the tussle, she got away. She freed herself and ran, called the police, and they came out and took a description, took the report. Pearline described her attacker as about 5'6", with braided hair and scars on his face. She did not report that he had facial hair. So 4 weeks later, on January 3rd of 1981, there was an officer who had been working the case of Pearline. He basically was like, okay, well, this story sounds familiar. There's 5 other women who have come forward with a similar story. Let's just say all of these attacks were committed by the same person. The officer, McDonald, came up with his own list of suspects that he brought in for a lineup. Pearline, on January 3rd, goes into the precinct to do the lineup and didn't identify any of these people as her attackers. She's like, no, I've never seen these people before in my life. So then Officer McDonald's like, dang, like that was the best effort I had. Like, I don't got nobody else. Let's just pause this investigation until I can figure out some more possible suspects. Just 3 days later, on January 6th, there was another attack. So January 6th, 1981, a woman named Paula. So there's Cynthia, Pearline, and Paula. Paula was attacked January 6, 1981 by a man holding a steel blue pistol. The perpetrator was successful in completing his attack that was sexual in nature. Paula tells the police that the guy was black, about 5'6", weighing about 200 pounds. She did not disclose that her attacker had any facial hair whatsoever. She just stated that the man was black, 200 pounds, and 5'6". The officer on this investigation's name was Officer J.H. Cawthorn. He also came up with his own line of 6 suspects that he brought in for questioning. All the attacks occurred in the same neighborhood. All of the women claimed that the man who attacked them was between 5'9" and 6 foot, weighed between 170 to 200 pounds, with no facial hair and possibly gold teeth. So, January 24th, they call up Paula. They're like, look, we got these suspects, we need you to come in. Paula was the last victim to have reported her attack. So they call up Paula, they're like, we got something to show you, come on down to the station. She comes down and they show her a live lineup that included Rickey Dale-Wyatt, who we're talking about today. She looks at the lineup, and upon checking out the guys, she failed to identify Mr. Wyatt as her attacker. So the police officers were basically in disbelief because, this was their second attempt to rally up the boys from the neighborhood and get somebody, put in jail. But unfortunately, Paula was not able to identify the men that they were hoping that she would. And so they were like, damn, well, we'll just throw out this particular record of this lineup and just act like it never happened. They actually did this with several lineups that included Rickey Dale-Wyatt. So on January 31st, despite being ruled out by Paula, Officer Coughlin, who had originally been handling Cynthia's case, drafted up a police report stating that the first 2 ladies, Cynthia and Pearline, identified Rickey Dale-Wyatt in their lineup, which was a photo lineup, not a live lineup. So they basically showed them a bunch of photos and were like, have you ever seen these men? Did one of them assault you, even though they had already done a live lineup with Rickey Dale-Wyatt? And so they had seen him before in the live lineup. It's important to note that in 1980 and 1981, Rickey Dale-Wyatt weighed approximately 130 pounds. 130 pounds. The attacker that they are looking for is between 170 and 200 pounds. The police were aware that Rickey Dale-Wyatt was approximately 40 pounds less at a minimum than the suspect they were looking for. But despite knowing that information, they went ahead and arrested Rickey Dale-Wyatt on January 24th, 1981, and charged him with the assault of Cynthia, who was the first victim to report. At the time of his arrest, Rickey Dale-Wyatt was 5'7" and 130 pounds. So Cynthia had originally said that her attacker was about 170. Pearline, who was 175 pounds, said that her attacker weighed the same. Rickey Dale-Wyatt was 130 pounds. That is 40 pounds lighter, which, that's a lot of weight. You know what I'm saying? That's a big difference. It's pretty easy to tell the difference between a man of those 2 statures. But I digress. So one of the women had underwent an exam at the hospital after she had been attacked. From that exam, they were able to collect samples and DNA. That DNA presented that there was active live semen found on her body. Not just a little bit, a significant amount. And so they shipped that off to the Southwestern Institute of Forensic Sciences, aka SWIFS. I just thought that was a real smooth name for something. SWIFS. Where the evidence was analyzed and preserved, saved for a rainy day. Despite Rickey Dale-Wyatt's appearance at the time of his arrest, him only weighing about 130 pounds, being 5'7", he had facial hair. He had a goatee mustache and no gold teeth. One of the officers stated that Rickey told him that he had lost weight in that previous 10 days. About 30 pounds, to be specific. He's like, yeah, I was talking to Rickey and he told me that even though he didn't match our guy's description right now, it's because he lost 30 pounds right before we arrested him. So that's why. Otherwise, he totally would have, matched. So although Rickey Dale-Wyatt was arrested for all 3 attacks, he was only charged and being prosecuted for Cynthia, the first victim who reported her attack. At her trial, Cynthia maintained that her perpetrator was a black man, nearly 6 feet tall, approximately 170 to 180 pounds, with no facial hair. She stated that at the time of her attack, she knew this because my girl was stunting, okay? She was outside. She was 5'5", 5'6" at the time, had 3-inch heels on, and her attacker was taller than her. So she was sure, she was confident. She's like, this, I remember, you know what I'm saying, vividly, looking up at this man. At the trial, at the time, Rickey Dale-Wyatt couldn't afford a proper attorney, so for a time he was representing himself. And in defense of himself, saying this, that he had committed this crime, he was like, look, she's saying that I would have had to be 2-3 inches shorter, 40 more pounds than I am right now. Rickey Dale-Wyatt had to have family members come and testify, even though everybody could see him, testify that he was the way he said he was the height he said he was, he always had like some little facial hair going on his face, and that he didn't change his appearance in any way for the trial. Like, he didn't go and lose 30 to 40 pounds for the trial, and he had never like kept like a cleanly shaven face. Like, he liked his facial hair, he liked to look like a grown man. So then they start calling the officers up who were taking care of these 3 different investigations. They start calling the officers up who originally took down the reports. Officer Coughlin was the first one to go up, the one who initially made contact with Cynthia and took her report the night of the attack. Officer Coughlin contradicted Cynthia's statement about the man who attacked her. He basically got on the stand and was like, oh, well, you know, when we were at the hospital, she told me that the guy was only 25 to 30 years old and that he was between 160 to 170 pounds. And that he was approximately 5'8". Mind you, this contradicts his own police report that he took, that he wrote and signed. But did he stop there? No. Because if they got anything, they got the audacity. He went on to say, before he might not have fit the description, but since he lost 30 pounds just in the last couple days, it must be him. Huh? I lost 30 pounds in a week. Can you believe it? The officer gets on the stand and says that this is what Rickey told him. Which, like, who would say that? There were no records anywhere that stated that this happened, that Rickey Dale-Wyatt, you know, said anything like this to anybody. Not only did he get up there and lie his little ass off, but he accused Rickey Dale-Wyatt's family members of lying about him having facial hair forever and that he must have shaved, you know, and they're just covering it up for him. He did all this on the stand, like, just the privilege. You know, the whole time that the trial is going on, Rickey Dale-Wyatt is maintaining his innocence. He's like, never wavered from the fact that he said he never had anything to do with this shit. He don't know nothing about it. He was, you know, he knew that samples had been taken from the first crime scene, and he was like, okay, get testing, like, let's go. He requested these things during his trial. There were several times where he eagerly offered up his own saliva, his own blood for testing, but unfortunately at the time, the testing of these items were inconclusive. So basically the blood test determined that the perpetrator could have been any blood type, and rather than just being honest about the test results and the fact that they were inconclusive, some of the defendants took advantage of the jury's lack of scientific knowledge and were like, see, it could be him. He has one of those blood types. It could be him. This is just more evidence to prove that he is the one who did it. Like, yeah, I got blood. It could be you, motherfucker. To claim that the perpetrator had to be a non-secretor, like Rickey Dale-Wyatt. So I just had to Google what that means, because what is that? A secretor is a person who secretes their blood type antigens into their personal body fluids, like their semen, their saliva, their sweat, etc. A non-secretor does not secrete any blood type antigens into their personal body fluids. 20% of African American males are non-secretors. So when they identified the fact that Rickey Dale-Wyatt was a non-secretor in court, they failed to mention that he's one of 20% of all African American men in the world. The state referred to Sally's report as the most important evidence, other than Cynthia's testimony that was offered during the whole entire trial. On July 31st of 1981, the jury convicted Rickey Dale-Wyatt of aggravated RAPE. At his sentence hearing, Paula, the victim of the third attack, came forward and identified him as her attacker as well, leading Rickey Dale-Wyatt's sentence to be 99 years in prison. He was never prosecuted for the other 2 assaults. Remember, so at first he was kind of representing himself, but eventually he did get an attorney. And at no point upon getting on the case did the attorney try to challenge the case or challenge any of the evidence, nor did he ever consult like an expert of any kind to make his own evaluations of the evidence collected, even though these are things that Rickey was actively asking for. After being convicted, Rickey Dale-Wyatt appealed his conviction many times, claiming that the identifications were coerced, that never at any point did he match the description of the attacker for any of the attacks, that, you know, the jury was manipulated by their own lack of understanding of like what was being said in the courtroom. However, time and time again, he lost his appeals, and so he sought the assistance of the GOAT, the Innocence Project. So the Innocence Project takes on his case, and they start looking into, you know, the evidence and everything that was used against him in his trial. So they hit up Swifts, and they're like, "What's up, y'all? Y'all got some stuff we need to take a look at. You know, can we get some access to it?" At first they're like, "Oh, you know, we actually lost that stuff a while back. Sorry." However, in November of 2005, after they kept looking for it, they recovered it, but it was partially degraded. So the testing was ordered on June 6th of 2006. And as you know, DNA evidence had been wildly just developed a lot over time, and they were able to use the evidence to prove that he could not have been the attacker. Glory day. A review of the scientific testimony that was given by Mrs. Sally from Swifts showed that the testimony was false. Like false, like wrong, like incorrect, damn near made up. Scientifically inaccurate and misleading. Like, my girl, you had one job. What did they give you? What did they do for you? I need to know. A more accurate representation of the DNA that they found, and a more accurate representation of the data that they had collected, would have been to say that the results of the testing provided no information that could have been used to link Wyatt to the attack. Like, instead of saying because he's not excluded, he must be included, it would have just been better to say, or more truthful to say, the results were inconclusive, we can't link him to the crime. The investigation also showed that the state had hidden and suppressed a fingerprint identification card from May 20, 1988, one of the times that Rickey was arrested, showing his weight as 135 pounds, as well as a photograph showing that he had facial hair on his face. Then there were records from January 13th, 1981, which would have been just a few weeks after the first assault and a few days after the third assault, showing that he had been hospitalized and his weight at the time was 144 pounds. So here's this hospitalization record stating that his weight at the time was 144 pounds. So it was consistent with the weight that he was when he was arrested. There's no possible way he could have lost that much weight in 3 days. Now, these records were available at the time of his conviction or at the time of his trial, and could have been used to discredit the officer when he stated that Rickey told him that he lost the 30 pounds. But this hospital report was never discovered because Rickey never had adequate representation during his trial. So nobody ever asked these questions or found this evidence that could have easily dismissed him at the time of the trial, at the time of his arrest. After collecting and gathering this evidence over the course of a few years, it wasn't until January 4th of 2012, at the age of 56 years old, after spending 31 years in prison, which was the longest time anybody in the state of Texas at the time had ever spent wrongfully convicted and committed in a state prison, Rickey Dale-Wyatt was exonerated and released. What's crazy is that at his exoneration hearing, he said that he looked out, into the crowd of the courtroom that was full, The first 2 rows were filled with other exonerees, other people who had been proven to be innocent that he recognized and had saw in the prison with him, from walking in the halls, working in the kitchen. He was like, I didn't know I knew so many people who had been in, you know, basically the same situation as me. But it was good, you know, to see them living their lives, you know, being free, but also coming back to support others like them. But isn't that crazy though? Like, just imagine. My boy's about to get his freedom. He look out and see so many other faces like his that represent the same situation that he is in. That's like so fucked up. On May 9th, 2012, the Texas Court of Criminals vacated his conviction and the charges were dropped. In December 2014, one of the judges in one of the courtrooms in Dallas officially ruled Rickey Dale-Wyatt an innocent man, which, like, duh, goofy. Y'all owed him that much. That's not all they owed my boy. He got him a nice little check for all his pain and suffering. Probably wasn't enough, because by the time Rickey Dale-Wyatt got out of prison, his daughter was 35 years old. 35 years old and had children of her own. He was a grandfather. Now remember, she was only 3 years old when he went to prison. 3 years old. Now she's 35 with her own kids. That's how much y'all stole from him. A lifetime of memories with his child. They offered him a plea deal of 5 years in exchange for a confession. And rather than doing that, he continued to state his innocence and went on to serve 31 years. Like, how manipulative is the system? All you gotta do is say you did this so that we can get this paperwork off our desk. And you'll get out in 5 years, but instead you're gonna serve. You're gonna give 30 years of your life up, which they originally had intended for him to serve 99 years. That is manipulation. And it ain't fair. And it ain't cute. It's the opposite of cute. And it still works like that. Like, it always all comes down to representation and your access to legal representation, and they know that in most cases people aren't going to be able to afford anyone that's going to do a decent job at representing their defendant. Oh, child, I forgot how irritating these cases get me, because, like, why are y'all like that? So he refused to say what y'all wanted him to say, and then y'all go on to falsify all of these things. Like, then it's like, okay, game on. Well, now we're gonna say this, that, and the other, whether it's true or not. People are gonna believe us over you, because you got this attorney that don't give a fuck, and you got us, the law, the police, the scientists. We've already all made up our minds about you, and all we gotta do is get these other people to think the same way that we think. It's 10 of us and 1 of you. What do you think is gonna happen? Don't laugh, y'all. My dog chewed up my freaking MAC lip liner pencil. Anyways, upon being released, he was reunited with his daughter, who was 35 years old, introduced to his grandchild, and, you know, essentially sent off to be in the world and live life as a free man. However, as you can imagine, this was a difficult task. He went away in 1981, and being released in 2014, he had never seen a cell phone. He had never used the internet. He was ill-equipped for the world that he was about to be reintegrated into. Rickey Dale-Wyatt served more time in prison than any other wrongfully convicted person in the state of Texas. Here's a fun fact for y'all. Dallas, Texas, national average of exonerations is 456% higher than the national average. Y'all got some splaining to do. That's high as fuck. There's a book by Henry Wade. It is called Tough Justice: How Dallas County Prosecutors Led the Nation in Convicting the Innocent. That is quite a title. That's quite a reputation to have. It's honestly a shame. Y'all should be ashamed of yourself. Your mama ought to be ashamed of you. Anyways, this is the finished look. All of the makeup details will be provided in the description box below. I hope you guys enjoyed this story. As far as I know, Rickey Dale-Wyatt is alive and well, like living his life. I hope that his freedom has served him well, and that he's enjoyed his time with his family, being reunited, experiencing the joys of the world and the joys of freedom. And I hope that Dallas and all these little other counties have, like, gained some form of integrity along the way. Let me know how you guys like this story. Let me know if you guys have any feedback or questions or suggestions for people that you want to be done. I highly suggest that you guys look into your own neighborhoods, your own backyards, your own community, and see, what kind of similar stories you guys find, who in your neighborhood has been convicted of crimes that are presumed to be innocent, or who have even been exonerated. I'd love to hear what you guys find. Follow me on all my social medias, etc., etc. And I hope to see you guys again soon. Have a great day. Bye.